Okay, it's no issue. Recording in progress message, no issue. And the thing what I was saying is that yeah, everybody needs to be together. All of us has certain expertise, certain knowledge in certain fields, and the condition is such that we need to put everything together. Our all forces should be together to fight this huge crisis we are going to face in. Actually, we are facing it. I mean, it's such a warm morning, warmth not from the earth, but the warmth is from the nature, which is not really expected. So to start with, Pratiksha, can I share my screen? I have the rights. Yeah, I guess I have. So let me share my screen, and when it is visible, just let me know. And I am putting this into a PPT mode, right? So this is the topic or rather question that Pratiksha has asked me, that what is the importance of ESG in automobile sector and BRSR data collection strategy. So these are two very interdependent questions, and actually focusing on automobile sector only would not make justice to this question. So what I would try to put overall concept of this kind of ESG and BRSR, rather to connect with BRSR and ESG. So I always love to start um, asking this question, that what is ESG? And this is an illustration by Hans Moller. If you, as you can see, six blind men and an elephant in a room. So if I just can get quick some responses from few participants, it's just I'll spend 10 seconds over here. If it is possible for them to unmute and respond, or you can put your comments on the
Yes,
chat.
they can unmute and
Also,
talk.
it is okay if you put it in the chat box, because we can access the chat box as well.
Yeah.
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 So what do you mean by ESG? What is ESG to you? As you can see, this the blind man, somebody is touching the trunk and considering it's a snake. Somebody is touching the ear, considering it a carpet. So what is ESG to individually to you? Very quickly, if you
This
can type.
particular diagram, I think it actually, what I think from this image is that a lot of people are unaware about what exactly ESG is, and yeah, and they are trying to explore it.
Very, very perfect, I would say, respond to this thing. Yes. So many of us consider ESG. I'm not spending much time on this because I'm sure you guys also have this similar thoughts on this image. And yes, many of us actually consider ESG to be environment. Let's do something on the environment, put a project on environment, put a tree plantation program, and we are working on ESG. Yes, we are working on ESG. However, ESG is not a very small domain. It consists of as environment, social, and governance, as the name suggests, but actually it is contributing to the business sustainability. From a business, I'm also coming from a business point of view, that if business does not sustain, there is no point. Nobody will be able to sustain and do whatever work they are doing. We are doing, all of us are somewhat related to either a business, or we are also someone of us are working pro bono, but mainly if the businesses are sustaining, then it makes sense for the business also to look after ESG. Now, is it that business will look after ESG once they are successful, or they should look after ESG while they become successful? And the answer to that is the latter one, because the all of us right now, if we are in the domain, if we are working in this domain, even if we are not, we know very well that each one of us, each individual, as well as the companies, the businesses, are dependent on the nature for their sustenance, their daily work, daily operation. Automobile industry is not different. So automobile industry in a day-to-day operation, what they do is basically they make automobiles and the components. So automobiles and their components are the engines, the chassis, the body, the electronics into it, the tires, everything included forms the automobile, right? It is the overall concept of assembling all of this together to make a car. So in their everyday operation, they deal with energy, they deal with water, they deal with waste, they deal with human beings because human beings work over there. So human rights is very important. They deal very much with the suppliers. The supplier sustainability is the utmost importance. If you have seen uh, past 1 or 2 years, there are huge shortage of chips, the microchips that are used in automobiles, and nowadays the automobiles are just they're bigger mobiles. You can do more or less everything what you can do with a mobile in your automobile, and connecting it to mobile, you can do even more further things. So these are huge electronics gadgets nowadays, more than a mechanical gadgets. So every day they are interacting with the different stakeholders, like workers, like suppliers, customers, and energy, water, waste, such environmental aspects, as well as it is very important that the overall governance of all these are very properly done, transparently done. Otherwise, there will be compliance issue. There are SEBI, there are NSEs, there are government organization who are looking after them, because you are making profit. So everybody is looking after you that the profit is earned in a transparent way. So that is how this the ESG things pan out. Uh, oh, why it is not moving? So that is the in a very nutshell. I won't say it's very much. It's not totally comprehensive, but at least these are the components of environment, social, and governance thing that touches upon an automobile industry. Climate change, pollution and waste, resource, land use, ecological footprint of the company, biodiversity are some of the aspects of environment. Health and safety, product and customer responsibility, community impact, diversity, these are related to social. Then anti-corruption, risk management, tax transparency, business ethics, everything comes under the governance. So as you can see, ESG for an automobile is not very different than any other industries. These are all applicable for an automobile industry as well. And I'm sure you must have already gone through this. I'll not spend much time, but 100% is that for an automobile industry, this particular topic of ESG, as per the investment firms, as per companies, asset owners, everything apply on automobile industries, because nowadays, if you definitely follow newspaper, you must have seen uh, companies like Mahindra itself, they have got secured huge amount of investment based on their different aspects. However, ESG was one of the main aspect they were looking for, and they actually the investors have done very thorough and rigorous audit of all the ESG claims that Mahindra have made, and they have actually gone to the different plants that we have and checked what we have said and we have disclosed and reported. So definitely you understand that this is something they are very much interested, and they are not just making it a tick mark exercise, rather they are very serious about it. So therefore ESG is definitely a matter that automobile industries are looking very seriously into it. Not only Mahindra, Tata, Hyundai, BMW, Mercedes, everybody is very serious about it, and they have faced problem. If you know of the Volkswagen incident, they have faced problem because of certain ESG issues. Out of automobile company, very recently, Adidas has been sued by a customer because the customer said that the claims Adidas are making to be a greener and cleaner company is not correct. Anyway, that is under the jurisdiction of US court, and this is under trial matter. So what is correct or not, that's not our concern. We can't say anything about that. But this is happening. The customers are very aware now. You can't just make greenwash. So as Pratiksha suggested, that I should give a very little brief overview of my company, that is Mahindra. So Mahindra is a group and a consortium over various like businesses. We have about 21 different type of businesses. The biggest one, and everybody knows, is about the automotive and farm equipment sector. The tractors of Mahindra, the red tractors are symbols. It's just like a kind of Xerox for tractors. So Xerox is a manufacturing company who makes copier machine, but everybody say it's a Xerox. We are going to do Xerox instead of saying photocopy. So the red tractor of Mahindra had become synonymous to that kind of thing. So we have also Mahindra Finance, which finance and insure a vehicle. Tech company, Tech Mahindra, which is another famous company, probably I guess. Logistics, real estate, hospitality, clean energy, agriculture. More or less, the footprints are diverse. And we started our journey in the around 2008-9, and at initial phase was just compliance phase. Then we came to the management phase, and now we are striving towards becoming the leadership. We are taking the leadership role. I would say not taken. The journey is quite tough, but yes, we are making efforts towards it, and of course, we have to do something. Otherwise, it will be a huge issue for even us, because whenever we do our risk assessment, climate risk assessment, we find many of our plants are in a location which is water deficient, and water scarce areas. And if one day water is stopped, the amount of loss is in crores. So we can't just leave that unattended. Similarly, we have companies, we have plants where, or rather even companies where they are operating, that is maybe a flood prone zone. And if flood comes, the effect on us will be in crores. So again, that cannot be left unattended. So definitely we are trying to attend that every risk that the climate is possessing now. So these are the 8 ways through which we are incorporating sustainability and ESG into our overall day-to-day process. And the journey is still on. We are working on this. And for each type of, like for example, I wouldn't say it's only automobile company, but these principles probably are very valid, or general principle that is valid for each and every type of industries to embed ESG and sustainability into their operations. 2 very quick case studies that how environmental concern, that environmental initiatives we have taken has given us a return, as well as saved certain amount of GHG emission. So you can say when we have moved to energy efficiency, and we have tried to doubling our efficiency in energy. Like for example, if we consider our product as car, like the biggest one is of course the car or tractor. So at certain level of say 2009, each car used to take X amount of energy. Now that car can be built in X by 2 amount of energy. That is 50% increase in efficiency. So, that require investment, and the financial saving what you are seeing over here is yearly saving. So this investment is capital investment that we have made, and this is yearly we are saving. So you can see a payback period of only 14 months, which is a phenomenal payback period for automobile company. Similarly, when we have invested in renewable energy, what we have seen is approximately 4.5 year to 5 year time, our whatever capital investment we had made is back to us. Now here you won't find the capital investment written because that is some financial term which is not disclosable. However, you can surely understand from the payback period how much the range could be, right? Now again, Pratiksha, this kind of BRSR related sessions have already happened, right? I'm not going into the detail of this.
Yeah. We have covered everything, but you can give a
Pratik.
brief about things. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, never mind. Just very quickly going through this BRSR thing, because as I told you, something will be there which may not be available in public domain. So basically, the concept of BRSR, when SEBI thought of it, is that uh, because investors are pushing very much on ESG disclosures, and there was no kind of government uh, prescribed format for disclosing the ESG, which is kind of sector agnostic. So BRSR initially was thought say that uh, certain data that government can give to the foreign investment uh, parties that will have certain they will get the gist of ESG things that are happening in India, and of course the company specific information. So these are the certain 5 points on which SEBI thought to develop the BRSR. Previously, there was BRR, you definitely know, and BRR was kind of general. In BRR, there were hardly few 40, 30, 50 questions, which in BRSR is about 170 questions that we had to answer. Going forward, the structure has changed a little bit, but number of questions are more or less same. But the depth of the questions, the answer that is required is much more now. So this is a brief time travel for how the BRSR has been developed. So since 2009, MCA's Ministry of Corporate Affairs is trying to incorporate the responsible business kind thought process into our business. And in that way, in 2012, the BRR was made mandatory for 100 listed companies based on the market capitalization. The scope of BRSR or the boundary of BRSR increased in 2016 to 500 companies and 2019-20 to 1,000 listed companies. Then 2019 onwards, the journey was even more intensive. The NVG's national voluntary guidelines were replaced with NRGBCs. The focus shifted from a general environment and social kind of disclosure to very focused disclosure, which will focus on ethics, which will focus on environment, sustainability, supplier engagement, stakeholder engagement, customer value proposition, and customer health, safety, data protection. So these are the some things which very pinpointed in NRGBCs. It was more focused, and that become the basis of BRSR. So BRSR in 2021 was now replacing BRR. It was mandatory for the again top 1,000 companies to respond to BRSR. Now, this very recent March 2023 new concept consultation paper was launched by SEBI, and where a BRSR core framework was presented, and beyond this probably a sector specific BRSR will also come. So this is the new structure of BRSR, which have a core, section A, section B, and principle wise disclosures. Section A is again general information, B is management practice, and principle wise disclosures contain all the 9 principles of NRGBC. Now, what is core? What is the concept of core? That is what is very important. BRSR that will actually also very requirement will be very much required in the data collection strategy. The core is something which SEBI believes that all the listed companies right now, not all the listed companies has been incorporated, but SEBI believes that it should be incorporated. All of them must disclose certain very small set of questions which will give a very good picture of the overall ESG commitment of the company and their performance. From that point of view, the BRSR code was developed. So the guidance was that it should not be more than 15 to 18 questions. So otherwise, this core later will be actually implemented on small companies as well. So they won't be able to respond. Therefore, the concept of core, even section A, B, C, or the principal as disclosure is not filled up by those small companies, at least core should be disclosed by each and every company. That was the concept of core. From there, the BRSR has evolved to core, section A, B, and other part. A very special thing of this new BRSR, as we say, or BRSR 2.0, which was the language that we were using, is that this third party assurance. And this is not only limited assurance, this is a reasonable assurance. That is what is proposed. I'm sure you know the difference between a reasonable and a limited assurance, but to very briefly, reasonable assurance is like the limited assurance is very much sample audit happens. Few random samples are picked up, and then the disclosure is assured by the third party that based on the random samples they have picked up, the disclosure is correct. However, in reasonable assurance, it is not random. Each and every sample is checked by the audit company, and therefore it is scope wise, boundary wise, it is much more than a limited assurance. And whenever there is a reasonable assurance that a company gives, a third party provides, they do look into each and every data point, each and every process, how the process, who are the data owners, who are the process owners, what are the check and balance that is there for the process. Everything is looked after. So it's a very elaborate process. And as you see going forward, that will be applicable for the core. And if you see, you must have seen the core questions. Those are there. Each and every company has to put a lots of effort. What does that mean? That means company will be much more, they will be very much looking after the transparency of the processes setup itself, how they are doing it, the governance, the company itself will do. What is that mean? What is that is meaning for people like us and you? Definitely that is a huge job creation model, because companies will require people who has knowledge in these things. The third party assurance provider will require huge number of people who are aware of all this data and requirements of BRSR and actually know how to put it into practice. That their requirements will be in thousands of people will be required in this field, because if you see 250 companies will have to do it from the next year itself, and the number of data points that the third party assurance provider has to check certainly requires more than one people uh, for each project, each company. So definitely this is a huge job creation model. So SEBI has thought of that also. It's not only that they are going to put uh, any random policy into market, but they have thought all of things as well. So this is a very, very special thing about this BRSR new format. Now coming to the data collection strategy, this is again very, this is general. Any company, not only automobile, any company, whenever they are trying to uh, form a data collection strategy, they need to follow these particular processes to identify the material topics and the issues they have. They identify the framework. In this case, they will identify the framework from BRSR. The KPIs are given in BRSR. Then they have to identify the data sources for sure, where they will get the data. Each of the companies, it will vary, but more or less, for example, HR related data, you will go to human resource of your company. Some areas, it's not only human resource. The employee relation is also a department which needs to bring into on board for HR related data. For certain social related data on community engagement and all, you will go to CSR. For environmental data, definitely there will be health and safety environment professional, or a environment department, separate environment department could also be there. So you have to identify the data source. This is a exercise for consultants. This is very important exercise they do to engage with the company. They identify who are the data owner, what is the data source, whether that is coming from SAP, whether that is coming from any other uh, such online platform, or it is manually collected. How then the check and balances are there for manual data collection. Then you have to train the data owner, because they are not aware that this kind of format is required for this data. So there will be definitely various type of formats across various plant, which we have also experienced. Say, for example, just inbound data, inbound transport data, we have found 7 or 8 different formats kept by different plants. And the data we generate, we require huge amount of effort from our side to cleanse it and bring it into the same type of format, so that we can use it to identify the emission from inbound transport. Similarly, technology platforms are, lots of technology platforms are available. We can take help from there. We have to track the data regularly. We should have a dashboard in front of us, which will show the fluctuations in data, what kind of data is coming, whether it's correct or not. The data should be collated on a plant level, then a region level, country level, if possible, if applicable internationally, uh, and then disclose it into the different format of GRI, BRSR, SASB, CDP, DJSI, whatever you are applying to. So this is the general format. And in BRSR, if you broadly classify whatever their principles, it's the NRGBC principles. Uh, it's not, won't find 9 over here, because some of the principles are same, which has been given in 2 different principle wise list in BRSR. So one of the kind of, I won't say homework to some extent, but Pratiksha, if I'm allowed, I would request
Yeah.
of our
Yeah.
participants to do a very kind of homework on all of these the principles. If you can put the number in from BRSR, that is ethical conduct is principle 1, stakeholder engagement in which principle you can see, or environmental
Yeah, correct.
is which principle. So if that you can do it, it will be a very good exercise for you also to understand.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No issue. So now, see, these again, there are certain for like principles that on which I have tried to give you certain guidance on how we can identify the data. Uh, Certain, like for most of the thing, you will see very general principles are given, because it will definitely vary company to company, organization to organization. But as I just gave some example a few seconds back, that uh, for certain data points, you have to, the owners will be more or less similar. One very important thing for BRSR is to check your policies, which is very important. uh, find out the policies as required as per the NRGBC, and NRGBC principles you will find anywhere if you search the internet on MCA website also, and identify that what is the NRGBC principle required and whether your policies are aligned to it. That is one very important aspect of BRSR. It is required. So you have to put it that. Um, Also, another very important thing is to bring your board aligned. Now, this is one of the toughest thing to do. Believe me, if anybody working in this sector would know, key to bring board members aligned to this NRGBC principles and all is a huge mammoth task, because they don't have much time. The top management cannot give much time, so we have to push every with all our might that you have to understand, please sir, and then you have to bring it to the board that these are the principle, these are the very gist of the principle, this is what you should look into the presentations whenever we make, and then you have to approve what you have to come to the same page. Otherwise what happens, we present some data to board, and then thousands of questions starts, that what is this, why you are doing this, what is the requirement, who asked, why. And if they are not aware from beforehand, that whole things make a board meeting completely jeopardized, and then people say, the top management or even the board members say, okay yaar isko hatao, ye time consume kar leta hai. So that is what something we need to bring them on board. So on ethical conduct, what is this? What is stakeholder engagement that we need to do on sustainability ESG things? Who are our stakeholder? Why have we chosen them as our stakeholder? Uh, whether we are doing kind of in what kind of engagement we are doing with it, and how that engagement brings value to us. That those are the things you have to make them understand. Environment part, I would say rather easy. People much more aware of environmental things that nowadays, because of certain amount of work that has been put by all of you together, and many other environmental professionals in the field. However, human rights is one of the place where people really become very cranky when they have to give certain amount of responses which they don't understand why is it required and what is the importance of it. So I have a hard, I would request someone of you to answer if later that is that why we need uh, a data on retention rate. What is the requirement of having a data on retention rate, and what does that do? So that is one of very important kind of questions that we need to answer to them. Data is available with them, I tell you, but once they know the context, then they provide the correct data. Otherwise, it won't come to you as a correct data. Again, supply chain engagement, another difficult aspect, definitely, because suppliers, big suppliers, the tier one suppliers, more or less are always aligned for large companies, but then the tier two, tier three suppliers, even though the business value is less, but their impact on environment or their impact on our company is also very high. So as a responsible organization, you should bring them into confidence as well. So again, give them the context. What is the thing? Also for supplier, you have to give them one few good reasons that if they care about ESG as a whole, what benefit it brings to them. So yeah, more or less, this is where I end my presentation. And now probably I would rather discuss with you that what you think, what your questions could be, or some few things which you couldn't find, or rather if I can answer those. So I'm stopping the screen share. If it require, I'll definitely share again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question from me.
Okay. Okay, sir. We have 15 minutes. So we can start with the discussion. Yeah.
Right. So Anirban, sir, question from me. So, when it comes to supplier engagement, how do you all try to inculcate the sustainability and the ESG standards, and how do you all promote the suppliers to even, like, especially the smaller suppliers? How do you all promote them to even follow the ESG standards?
Right. One very important question on the on this, because smaller supplier, as I heard, uh, that is very one of the problem pain points, you can say. So what we do, very two three things we have done. So one is definitely you know the carrot and stick method. So one thing as we have done is their capability development. We have taken programs on building capability into our suppliers, informing them about ESG, train them several times, and also we have incorporated these ESG and sustainability related issue into our supplier assessment. So when suppliers are onboarded, we ask them these questions, whether they have this based on the size of the supplier, on environment, on social and governance, whether they have these things in place or not. And certain automobile companies, even for our company, we have actually put weightage. We have actually put weightage on these scores that we give when we onboard a supplier, we hire them a supplier. We have put a 10% weightage on ESG score. So once that is done, now they have to definitely say ki, okay, we have to take ESG into our consideration, but they don't know. Many of the suppliers come and say, we don't know. Then we train them. We handhold them that you can do this. We give them our like kind of blank pro forma or format of data collection at the very beginning. Start data collection, see what it is going. Getting their data, we sometimes analyze and tell them, you have hot points over there, hotspots over there, you take into this and you can save. Now some of the supplier actually have saved lots of money when we say your water consumption seems very high based on the peer analysis, or this is the more or less industry trends, you are consuming lots of more water. What is the situation? Go and check. We can't go everywhere. We ask them, go and check. So some of them have said very simple thing. There was a leakage, and one of the suppliers said they had a tank and their water supply is for 2 hours from the MIDC. So they kept the tap open for 2 hours, but the tank used to get filled in about approximately 1 hour, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Rest 45 minutes, water was overflowing, but the meter was running. So the MIDC was charging them on the meter reading. So now when they have started to stop the tap at about 1 hour, one and a half or some time, 1 hour, 10 minutes, they are saving that much. So that amount of money for a small organization is very impactful to their bottom line. So they said, okay, yes, we are actually getting benefit out of it. So they are very much interested now into our programs. They say, how can we contribute? Tell us, we want to come and join your program. So now actually a huge program is going on in our company, which is taken by UNGC and by Deloitte. No, not Deloitte. UNGC and another company, they are arranging it. For the supplier itself, we are not involved. The suppliers are trained. So UNGC is developing that training program and suppliers are trained. So that is how we are inculcating our sustainability or ESG goals into our suppliers.
Got it. one more question over here.
Could you
When it
repeat
comes to,
that?
sorry, yeah, so I've got another question. When it comes to NCAP rating of a particular,
You are
man,
you are speaking, or Prakash, you are trying to speak?
yeah, I'm trying to speak. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, Anirban sir, so another question. For example, nowadays there are certain NCAP ratings as well, right? Which are given to the automobile, especially cars, of what's the star rating of that particular car, how safe the car is and stuff. So, will that all does that also falls under ESG for the automobile sector?
Yeah, thanks, Pratiksha, for responding to that question on IRR. Wait a second. Can you please explain environmental aspects again? Environmental aspects of what, Shweta? If you can just environmental aspects of the ESG or on that automobile industry. And Diksha, you are asking who are data owners. So data owners are basically, when we consider a data flow, it starts with the data source and the data owners. So for example, if I am looking for energy data, where will I go? Somebody is giving energy data to us. That person will be our data owner. So now that data owner could be a person from the accounts, because accounts pay the energy bills and they have the energy bill from the discoms. So they could be one of them. There are companies where energy managers are there. They could also be our data owner for energy. Similarly, for HR related matter, number of people or number of employees, our HR person will be our data owner, or our employee relationship person will be our data owners. So where we get the data from, very raw data. So when we disclose, we might be disclosing emission, but the raw data is the energy or fuel consumption. So for example, diesel consumption. So for a company like automobiles manufacturer, for a plant, who will give us the consumption of diesel? This could be either the accountant who maintains the SAP. Because he puts in the amount. What we have done, we have asked him to put another data point, that is the quantity. So he is now our data owner, right?
Okay. Do everybody put data in SAP system?
No, definitely not. Many of the data point you will find manual. So for example, another example I give, inbound data, like inbound transport. Our data owner are mostly the security person in the gate, because they notice which
Yeah.
truck is coming
Yeah,
in.
truck.
Yes. Now what we have done, we have given them a format.
Okay.
Previously, what they are just used to copy it in a notebook. Now we have given them a format. Whenever a truck is coming with material, note from where it is coming, where will it go from here. That is definitely not required, but definitely where it is coming from and what is the quantity they are bringing. Now they don't need to note down the kilometers. Now we know it is coming from Gurgaon to Mumbai. We will find out the kilometers from the Google, because otherwise it will be very difficult for them.
Right. Yeah. So there, Rahul sir.
Varun is asking, LCA is being carried out for automobiles and consider BRS reporting. LCA is there in principle 2 as a leadership indicator. LCA, many of the automobile manufacturer haven't yet started doing LCA. For us, I can say we have done LCA for 2 products, and those 2 products, the LCA value we do report in the BRSR.
So related to LCA, when you look at manufacturing and then distribution of a vehicle in the market, do you look at the life cycle of 15 years of the vehicle, that how much diesel it will consume or fuel it will consume, and to incorporate in the LCA?
Yes, for us, we consider 10 years,
Okay.
but that 15 years as per the compliance. It
But
should be considered.
but are the companies required to incorporate this in their scope 3 disclosures
Uh,
also?
Voice got a.
I'm saying, are they required to disclose this in their scope 3 disclosures also, the running of the vehicle by the consumer?
Uh, there is for scope 3, there is nothing as such compliance as of now that is mandatory, not mandatory, but voluntary. But yes, based on your assumption of 10 years or 15 years, you have to disclose it. But again, that will be based on the assumption basis. You can't actually measure that, right? So you
Yeah,
have to
correct. So
assume that your vehicle will run certain amount per year for 10 years. This many kilometers will be run, and fuel consumption of roughly certain amount based on your initial, and 10-year long the fuel consumption will reduce for sure. So certain average of that, and then identify the amount of emission that will it
so
will.
so so your downstream from your plant to the dealer is one emission, but then you incorporate also the subsequent emissions. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is what I'm saying. Category 11 product in use,
Okay.
that
Thanks.
is also get incorporated, and that is the calculation. What I told you is this.
Assumption based, yes.
Manufacturing to dealership is hardly negligible in respect to this category 11.
Get your point. Thank you.
So there is a question, and we have like we can take 5-6 minutes, but yeah, let's answer the Varun question that any initiative taken for aspects of circular economy in Mahindra or automobile sector.
Circular economy initiative as a general is very, very important for automobile industry, and knowingly, unknowingly, many company has taken that, because
Okay.
people are buying recycled steel to manufacture the body. Tata Steel, like those huge manufacturer, ArcelorMittal, who manufacture steel, they are incorporating the steel. And you know something, these steel and whatever waste, the scrap is generated, those are sold out. That actually brings money to us.
Wow.
So when
Amazing.
we sell it out, some person is buying it. See, when we are buying something, we are not going to waste it. So who are buying it? The steel manufacturers are actually buying it from us, the scraps. They're melting it, and whatever the other processes, I'm not sure of those processes, how they incorporate, but they are definitely incorporating that steel into their fresh steel manufacturing. So virgin material requirement is reducing. And why will you waste the steel? It has value. So we are not wasting a single gram of steel. It's reconciliated and put into the SAP. And when something is going into SAP, it is getting audited by the financial auditor. And when financial auditor is
Correct.
auditing it, still now, that is the biggest audit everybody faces. So they will be very, very particular about that. So that is one very important circular economy aspect. There are few others. People are now making seat covers that you see on the BMW cars are made of plant-based resource. They are not leather as such. Uh, if you consider this Hyundai, they have a whole like they have an ecosystem, like their plant and surrounding other plants and other companies. They have actually sorry, not Hyundai, it's Renault. In France, in Renault has a whole circular economy kind of village. And so whatever their waste is, they have actually invited similar industries which actually use their waste to put their plant into that village. So it's a circular economy kind of put overall. So you can search Renault circular economy, that thing on Google, you will definitely get it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
circular economy aspect is very much considered into our business. Even Mahindra has a business of it, Cero, that is the name of the business, CERO. They do recycle automobile parts, and whichever is usable actually is sold out to various
Yeah.
suppliers of ours.
So Anirban, I have a
Okay.
question. how is Indian automobile industry positioned from the ESG perspective as compared to the global companies, automobile companies?
Right. So Indian automobile companies, see large companies, if we consider, we have Tatas, we have Mahindras, we have Maruti Suzuki's. Overall, the global companies like BMW, Mercedes, they definitely are way matured, I would say. But we are not very far behind. The reason being that because the foreign investment FDIs are coming into our industry quite a lot. So automobile industries are specifically uh, putting lots of effort to consider the ESG aspects. In fact, I would say that nowadays it's a regular uh, topic. Given even 5 minutes, it's a regular topic. At least 2 to 3 slides are regularly asked by the top management to be presented in board meetings. So way to go. If you can see the CDP ratings and all sort of things, few automobile manufacturing from India are coming into the leadership positions. So definitely the automobile manufacturing industry in India are taking very serious steps in towards ESG. However, way to go. I would definitely say we are hardly 10, 15, 20% into that, but lots of
Okay,
things.
thanks. One more related question. See, your ESG strategy, you guys are spearheading the ESG strategy, the ESG approach, and potentially because of, the chairman, I think Mahindra's Anand sir. He's
Yes.
also very, socially conscious, right? So do you think that because you guys have a chairman like Anand sir and probably Ratan Tata is also there leading it,
Mhm.
because of this, you guys are able to spearhead, and it makes it easy for the whole team to have that ESG direction, because the topmost person is also very much inclined towards that socially and environmentally. Uh, they do have an social and environmental view as well.
Right. So see, two things I would say. The answer is yes and no both. Yes, why? Because when it comes from the top uh, person in the company, like Anand sir, Anand Mahindra sir, the thing is that people definitely do take a notice. However, Anand Mahindra understands business very well. And this is definitely what he says. If you notice that he definitely sees a business opportunity in his ESG initiatives. That is why even Ratan Tata ji, Anand Mahindra sir, even if you even don't see a lot of comments on initiatives as from the Maruti Suzuki, they probably don't put a lot of things in the public domain. They also do, because this makes business sense. I'm telling you, I've showed you two business cases which are very just tip of the iceberg. We are actually whenever we have put renewable energy, we have seen the business case. Those are tangible, right? But for the non-tangible one, if you see in Mahindra, I can tell you, you will see every other bench a person is sitting who is spending time with Mahindra for last 15, 16 years, 20 years. I report to a person who is there in Mahindra for 3 decades. So that person has certain loyalty and expertise. He knows the system very well. Consider another big entity, Tata. You will see many people in Tata who are there for 10, 15, 20 years. Why I'm saying this? The benefit you get from these human resources are intangible. But this cannot be quantified, but that doesn't mean it's not important. When a loyal person having understanding of the system works, things works very smoothly. Otherwise, if I go to a new company, I will take up almost a year to understand. Whereas if I ask my boss, sir, I have to, like coincidentally, his name is also Anand. When I ask Anand, for this data, whom should I go? he will say, okay, ask Sudhir on that, ask Amol on that. He knows. Then we say, how do you remember? You know, more or less 200 people by their name and phone number. He said, say, I have spent 3 decades in this company, and those people have also spent about similar time. So we know each other so well. I know what is his strength, what is his weakness. I know how to make him work. So that is what the intangible benefit is. So why I'm saying this, even the topmost person says, if that beneficial things are not there, company board will not allow you to do invest into such things.
Got it.
If
Thanks.
to retain that human resource, company need to spend, right?
Correct.
Sometime they want to go to other company, but see, okay, if I'm getting certain benefits over here, I should stick back over there.
Correct. I think there are so much of learning we all got from you. And we have another session lined up. So if
Yes, I
anybody wants to reach
taken
out to you,
8 minutes
so can
of,
we, yeah,
sorry for that.
sorry. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, can you allow them to speak with
Yes,
you
yes,
on LinkedIn?
I have no issue. Please do write to me. My email ID is with Pratiksha. If you can give it to the,
Yeah.
okay. Until unless it's a certain information which I cannot disclose on behalf of my company, I'll definitely help you out with any of your question. Please do write, no issue. If in case you have any other questions also, please do write to Pratiksha. Pratiksha, note it down, send it in a
Yeah.
Word file. I'll try to respond to each and every question. Uh,
Yeah.
you ask, I'll email you that. You can share it back with the participants.
Thank you so much. We really missed your session in last GHG, and a lot of boot camps happened from the first GHG boot camp. And thank you so much for coming and spending Sunday with us. And yeah, if you want to stay back, you can.
I'll have to log off. Sorry, Pravin. I would
Okay, no problem.
definitely look forward to your session, but I request Pratiksha to share the recording. So and Pravin, sorry, I have eaten 10 minutes of your time.
No problem.
No.
I wanted to listen to your session. So I was there from the start anyway.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Pravin. Thanks. That means a lot to me. And thank you, everyone. I'm sure you guys all are putting all your might to make our earth a better place. That is definitely required for. I have a small child, and I am doing everything for him, like to make this place a little better, so he doesn't need to suffer this much that we are doing. I don't know, but let's our finger crossed and let's work towards it.
Sure. I'll send every chat box question to you. We can answer back to them. Yeah, circle back on that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Hi, Pravin sir. Very well. Welcome and good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I wanted to take a 5 minutes, break or something, but
Yeah.
we had a really great discussion with Anirban sir. And let's not take a break right now because Pravin sir is here. Before Pravin sir start, we'll have a small Slido session again. And don't worry, this is not a technical one, but yeah, I have put something where you can at least understand what he is going to talk about in a BFSI. So let me share the another link with you, and then we can start with Pravin sir's lecture. Just give me 1 minute. I think this will take time. Pravin sir, can you introduce yourself till the time we have the Slido on?
Sure. So I'm Pravin Jadhav. By profession, I'm a chemical engineer. And from my first job, I got opportunity to work at National Chemical Laboratory in Pune, NCL. It's a CSR laboratory to work on the national greenhouse gas inventory. So in 2002, I started working on carbon footprint of our country and got interested into this field. Thereon, I continued journey into the research further at National Environmental Engineering Research Institute. We had a NTPC sponsored project. 2005, as you know, Kyoto Protocol was signed. So NTPC thought they should be ready in case there are carbon taxes in India. They had sponsored a project to develop the carbon capture technology. So along with some other research institutes, NIRI was also working on development of amine-based adsorbents. Amine-based absorption technology is commercially available. However, this will increase the cost of electricity by around 30%. So we are developing low-cost adsorption technology, which will reduce the cost of CO2 capture, as well as make it possible at higher temperatures. So absorption, we need to first cool down the gases because the amines get degraded. The absorption efficiency is down at the higher temperatures. So adsorbents were developed at which will lower between 60 to 80 degrees. And we filed some papers, filed some patents. The technology was also transferred for the further pilot scale research to the IIP Dehradun and NTPC, of course. Later, I came to the carbon markets, the CDM as we know. So I worked full time in carbon markets for 5 to 6 years, 2008 to 12. And from there on, I was in consulting. So sustainability consulting for some of the starting BRR initiatives, as well as whosoever was doing the GRI reports. So even from that time, the Walmart and some of the large textile companies used to ask their suppliers to do carbon footprint, either as part of their eco-risk assessments or a standalone carbon footprint report. Also deciding a strategy on emission reductions. So we were continuing with that. And from 2020, I joined the corporate sustainability team, wherein I worked on the ESG ratings, CDP response, and at RBL Bank now, I am heading the environmental and social risk function. So under the chief risk officer, we have this requirement of assessing E&S risk of large wholesale loans. Wholesale is to the industries. So if the loan size is more than 7 crore and the tenure is more than 12 months, all loans come to us for a review. And if we see that they have any, you just heard in earlier session as well, what are the different E&S topics. So on the material topics, we try to understand if there are any potential risks which would result in the loan defaults, and work with the borrowers to come up with a mutually agreeable solution. Typically, large companies which give the project finance for large infrastructure projects like including power plants, industries, even solar energy, even if they are not falling under the EIA regulation, the large lenders, especially those who have signed the sustainability initiatives like Principles of Responsible Investments, PRI, the UNEP Finance Initiative, FI. So they request them to do a environmental social impact assessment. So ESI is conducted by the similar agencies who conduct the EIS. In some cases, they also recommend the international consultants like ERM, etc. And the identified impacts are also proposed with some mitigation measures. So that is the exact role that we play in a small manner here. So since bank has to work with many other bankers who do not even recognize that this risk yet, especially in the public sector. So we try to do whatever is possible within our powers.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you, sir.
Pratiksha, you can go.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. You guys have the Slido link. I'm sharing the screen for Pravin sir because he can see the. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, let's do this. Yeah. There are 5 questions. First, so Pravin, sir, we get all the participants here, and then we get to know that how many people have, participated and how many people are answering the questions. So we get the details here. It is like 20 seconds. I have set a 20 seconds per question. So there are like 6 questions and 24 people have participated. So whenever they answer, number comes here. Okay. There, there we got the answer. It's physical and transition risk, which we haven't covered in BRSR. That's why they are not aware about it. But you guys should read about TCFD's framework. And yeah, last question for today. Next, we don't have a Slido. We have a direct lecture to Abhirup with Abhirup. And yeah, let's go ahead. If few of you are tired, just get the energy back, drink something. And we can start with the Pravin sir lecture. Pravin sir, you can share your screen. I have given the access to the another account of yours.
Sure, sure. Thank you. So one of the questions is answered in the heading here. So the BFSI sector basically is banking, financial services, and insurance. So the insurance, some of the insurance agencies in India as well do not have a banking business, and some banking sector companies are not in the insurance. So this is the differentiation. They are generally classified under this similar to some of the other sectors like IT services, even though they may not be making any specific software, but overall the function and objectives are similar, and issues, sustainability issues can be similar. Hence, this categorization is. So we'll try to see the why and how the BRSR will help in assessing the environmental social risk that I was talking about from the lending perspective, as well as the climate risk assessments. RBI, as you are aware, last year came up with a discussion paper. The guidelines or rules are not yet notified. However, there is work in progress, and anytime RBI will ask banks to start the climate risk reporting as well, assessment, and how they are working on it to mitigate these risks. So the importance of this is environmental and social, or ESG, is also considered as one of the risks along with the credit risk. So similar to a person's CIBIL score, the credit rating agencies review the industrial or corporate borrowers and give them the credit rating. You may have seen many agencies like CRISIL and others give the credit rating AA, AAA, BB. Even the large external rating agencies give the ratings to the countries as well. So you may have seen sometime India getting stable rating, and some other country which is not doing very well, the rating being downgraded. So these essentially form basis of investors whether to invest into the bonds of governments for that country or for a particular corporate, at what are the additional risk mitigation measures that they should take. So if the credit rating is not very good for a company, they will ask for securitization. The owners of the company will give their personal guarantees, including the factories, the land, sometimes their own personal flats or bungalows, etc., whatever they may have, as a guarantee for these loans. So the banks has an additional backup kind of in case there is a loan default. So even the RBL and some of the other banks who have signed with the voluntary principle, or we have taken credit lines from the global investors, they had asked us to have E&S risk assessment as part of integrated into the lending principles. So most commonly used principles followed are by the IFC's performance standards, International Finance Corporation. The web link takes you to the homepage. It's a simple Google search also if you do. These are in public domain. So basically, as you most of you are aware of the EI reports. So typically, it asks us to do the basic environmental and social risk impacts, and about labor and working conditions, resource efficiency and pollution, which takes care of the environmental aspects, HSC, then involuntary resettlement in case there is a land acquisition or there is a forest involved where the people already using the forest may need to be relocated. Conservation of biodiversity conservation, another important area where the forest dependent industries like palm oil, consumer goods, or even the paper, etc., those industries which are dependent on forest, for them these issues are important. Indigenous people and cultural heritage, if the plant expansions or any other new acquisitions, land acquisitions are going to impact indigenous people in those areas, as well as cultural sites. So as per IFC principles, you are not supposed to give loan to those which have negative impacts, which cannot be mitigated. Then those loans are not approved generally. So here, there is a typical approach to the E&S risk management. So banks have followed the exclusion principles. So first checklist, we create awareness among our loan officers that as a first check, they see if the particular sector is from the excluded industries. Typically, each bank has an exclusion list on their website as part of their ESMS policy, sustainability policy, etc. These include, depending on each company, but the IFC's main list includes tobacco, gambling, alcohol, and all other which are not legal, the forests which are not sustainable. So many such activities are not under the, or these are the no-go areas for a bank. Any loan, that may be any loan. So still, you may be wondering how many tobacco and alcohol companies still get a loan. So not all the investors have signed these principles. Some continue to have exposure to these areas or the sin sectors, as we know. So these industries go to those lenders who are still okay with exposure to these sectors. Then we do the risk categorization in high, low, medium sectors. So each transaction, or depending on the sector, some industries have identified which are the high risk areas, which are the medium risk and low risk. So typically chemical industries, the CPCB red list sectors will be high risk categorized or medium, depending on the impact, sizes of the factories, the mitigation measures already in the design. And the low risk typically are service sector or very short loans, which are towards the working capital, which are used by companies typically for the salaries and keeping some stocks in the of the raw materials, etc., or used by traders. So if the risks are identified, which are high or medium, in that case, ENS covenants are agreed. Basically, these are the mitigation measures. So suppose for a typical company, I come to know that they have very high energy intensive operations. For a ton of steel produced, they are using very high energy compared to the benchmarks or other sectors. Then we decide that can they do an energy audit, which will obviously save them money. But we agree on a timeline by which they will conduct energy audit and implement some of the measures recommended in that audit, and also possibly go for ISO energy management system. So depending, mutually agreeable, depending on the kind of loan, the other bankers' position, etc. Such terms are put in the loan agreements, sanction letters, as these are called. So these are the ENS action plans and or the covenants that are put into sanction letters. So there is a regular monitoring of it. Next year, when they are coming for the loan renewal, so we check what were the conditions put for, whether the agreed timelines are agreed even on the ENS side of the terms put in. In some cases, if these are small companies, we also have to do some capacity development. So either through our site visits or some online forums, we conduct site audits. If it is a large loan, in some cases, we take help from the technical assistance facilities of our land or foreign lenders to create some additional capacity development programs.
So one question on the previous slide, you had one principle by the name of culture heritage. Generally, any example, how would you determine from a culture point of view the risk?
Cultural heritage, one example I can remember immediately is one of the renewable energy companies was constructing a hydropower plant in Uttarakhand. So there, some of the local members used to have one rock as a god. So this is considered as a cultural heritage. During the stakeholder consultation, the report found out that this particular is a cultural heritage site and the project will have to be relocated so that access to it will have to be continued even at a full dam condition. Otherwise, there will be protests from the locals. The locals may not cooperate with you during construction or even during operation. So any identified cultural heritage sites based on either nationally recognized or even local communities, faith, etc., those are typically said that you will either not encroach that area or even the approach roads towards it so that there is continued approach to the particular site. So these cares are taken during the project design.
Understood. Thanks. Thank you.
So some of the banks, Yes Bank, Axis, Federal, and RBL, we have these ENS principles or the policies in public domain. You can see our exclusion list, what are the typical management approaches put forward, as well as the procedures summarized in 8 to 9 pages are available on our website. So this is the typical risk integration.
So risk committee, where does the risk committee work over here? I mean, the cultural side, which you told us, like, was not they aware about the EIA, and like what all the process needs to be there to assess that land, who assess that land, who give the permission, before the project? Because the example you told us that they found the rock and then the next thing happened, but before they analyze the land and everything, right? So who do that?
So, as I mentioned, some of the large projects, even in India, are required to conduct an environmental impact assessment. So these are conducted by the external consultant.
Okay.
Typically, the companies also have their land acquisition teams. While sourcing the land, they do the due diligence, whether the ownership is clear, whether there are any other informal dependence on that particular land. So depending on the sensitivity of that particular project, they will try to avoid such sites. Even in cases where, as I mentioned, the environmental impact assessment is not mandatory. If it is a large project loan of 15 to 20 years, typically lenders ask the voluntary ESI report to be developed by external consultant. So this is typically a third-party report because this requires expertise of land, biodiversity, zoology, social. So all such aspects are difficult to have within a company, and it is supposed to be independent assessment. So these are typically conducted by third-party EIA consultant.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
The risk committee is what we report to. So monthly we send the report how many transactions were assessed from E&S risk point of view, and what are the action taken by it. If some client is resisting to some of the conditions, the waivers are approved only by the risk committee. In some cases, they may allow it. In others, if they have any securitization, like as I was mentioning, the banks typically have a backup plan in case the loan defaults. They have the land, the factories, all the equipments, etc., as a guarantee, including some of the personal properties of the owners as a guarantee for in case the loan defaults. So in such cases, the risk committee, which meets monthly, may still allow it, but it has to go to that highest committee. So typically, the relationship manager submits the checklist once we identified that particular transaction is eligible for the NS risk assessment. RM is the relationship management who has developed that particular loan facility. The environmental social risk team conducts research on the particular client. Here we see your website on the different policies, the disclosures, including your sustainability report, BRR or BRSR now, any other ESG ratings that you have published. So all those questions which are already published are eliminated so that it avoids rework. A client will not be very happy if we ask the same questions which he has already taken efforts to make a sustainability report or put it in a public domain. So here is why the foreign investors were asking the SEBI to make the non-financial disclosures mandatory, because even though GRI came in way back early 2000s, still beyond 200 or 250 companies were not doing anything on the public disclosures through their sustainability non-financial reporting. That is why SEBI made it mandatory for the top 1,000 companies. I think we had enough time to go voluntary. Yeah, Sudhir has a question.
Yeah, Pravin. So my question is that the ESG approach that RBL is taking, wherein you guys are deep diving into all the environmental, social, related points for any large tickets or any client, right? Don't you think so? You
Yes.
guys are also losing out on business because for example, let's take mining,
Yeah.
or probably let's take land acquisition, right? So land acquisition and those things, it does have quite a lot of environmental and social impact. So how do you deal with it? I think most of the things, it might be going to the risk committee. That's what my understanding is, to whom you guys report. whether we
So,
should go.
as
Yeah.
I said, the management is convinced that this is the correct risk management approach. If we are losing, doesn't matter. As I said, exclusion list is followed to the spirit. We don't have very huge exposure to the alcohol, gambling, tobacco, these sectors, including some of the traders of tobacco companies. We don't support them, even though we have very large retail focus. So management is convinced that this is a risk management approach. If I'm losing the business, doesn't matter. It will possibly save me NPA in future. So this is accepted as a good practice, which will help us minimize our losses in future.
Okay.
And primarily, this was also driven from our investors. The one of the large British international funds, earlier it was known as CDC, now it is called British International Investment, had a large equity in us. So they had asked us to sign to these principles way back in 2013, even before we went public. So we went public in 2015. From that day, we have public sustainability policy and this committee.
Thank you.
So after the checklist for the high risk categorized industries, the risk team, somebody from the ENS risk team also visits along with the other team members who do the diligence on other aspects of accounting, etc. Our team member does the ENS risk assessment. So we go to typical like short sustainability audit, including environmental, social parameters. We speak to some of the employees, including the temporary workers, whether the safety and all the social principles are followed, their PF, PSIC, etc. are taken care, and whatever documents are requested, if these are not provided in the site visit, we make a list available, request them to submit it by some date, after which the points will be closed. In some cases, there is a follow-up call with the client to understand some of the documents that they would have submitted. And based on either the energy, safety, some of the human rights principles, we agree on a mutually agreeable corrective action on the identified material issue. And these are put as a condition, 1 or 2 conditions. The minimum will be the client will notify me within 15 days or 30 days of any regulatory notice and any major incident, including accidents. So these are the 2 minimum conditions put in the sanction letter. So this is the typical policy. So the ENS risk team coordinates between the investors. We have banks relationship managers from one side and the clients, as well as we report to the ESG committee, which is under the board. And I report to the head of enterprises, which is just below the chief risk officer. And ESG committee has one of the directors. Arun has a question. Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, thanks, Pravin. Pravin, I have a question regarding the what sort of the guidelines the team used to follow, the law of the land. Say, for example, the regulatory agencies, what they used to set, or the globally recognized way of the guidelines. Because, say, for India, the state governments used to attract the investment, so they used to dilute the loss. Say, for example, reduction the boundaries of the wildlife sanctuaries, or making the wetland or marshland into convert into the normal land. Such things are happening in most areas, like those things. Other places, what the project financing companies or the big companies used to take a call, apart from the environment also. Say, for example, if some company is investing in some asbestos containing product manufacturing industry, or the like the things in asbestos is not banned in India, but globally most companies know that.
So I got your point. You are perfectly bang on. So asbestos is part of the IFC's exclusion list, and it is also adopted by some of the banks in India. So including RBL, we do not support more than the 2 to 5% asbestos allowed as per that IFC's exclusion list. So we follow stringent principles over and above the local laws. some cases, the relationship managers or clients say that I have all the clearances. Why do you want me to send this additional data points? That time we convince them. These are similar to what we discussed now. The bank's board is convinced, and some of the investors have asked us to follow this. In that case, they understand, okay, this is part of a mandatory due diligence that is going to happen. There is no other way. Similar to credit rating approval, ENS risk rating also is mandatory for the loan of sanction. So we go beyond the standard checklist. Again, depends on a specific loan size also and tenures also in some cases. So in some cases where the loan is securitized, either by property securitization, etc. In those cases, and the tenures are short, sometimes based on the discussion, we have some waivers. However, in most cases, depending on the quantum or materiality of that particular aspect, we take it on case basis. So this is a summary. We start with the exclusion list. I have given link to the IFC's excluded criteria. We have internal sectoral checklists. So for the 17 sectors over last from 8-9 years, the team has developed a different specific checklist. So here we include all the important aspects that we have been discussing, includes environmental, OHS, social. Going further, the next topic that we have is about climate change. So for some of the large infrastructure projects, we also do the climate risk checklist. And if there is a land acquisition, so it includes the indigenous people and involuntarily resettlement as well. So if I have to give one example, this is a typical example of a specific transaction in a road construction sector. So here, first we try to identify what are the different risks in this is standard, very, yeah, Joseph sir has some questions, yeah.
Hi, so two questions. One, in your framework, does products come under, do you have a filter on your products like NPAs and assets when your business team puts out? That's one. Second is the broader guardrails, which is put out by regulators like RBI and so on and so forth in a particular country. How do you feedback it into your system? Because there may be frequent changes during a fiscal year, isn't it?
I don't think I understood the question.
So the products of the bank, right?
Yeah, okay. So we have product managers and then a compliance team which regularly checks. So any new products that is proposed goes through the approval process. So there is an approval committee, product approval committee, includes the different sectoral experts, including the compliance and the risk management committee or the management committee of the bank, ManCom, which has spent more than 2-3 decades in banking. So they review the aspects, regulatory aspects, and continually monitor the regulatory aspects and update the products accordingly.
Okay, so you're saying that the environmental, so the ESG framework has a say in the product final rollout, yeah?
Yeah, so this is an independent assessment. So the credit appraisal team, which finally sanctions these loans, takes the approval from, there is a stepwise process, takes the credit appraisal memorandum, CAM, the approval committee reviews it, and similarly, the committee also needs okay from the credit rating side as well as the ENS risk side. So these are independent assessments that go and our objections are understood during that committee and how the particular relationship manager is proposing to take appropriate mitigation measures.
Okay. And the other question was the regulator in the country where you operate, right? Like RBI, they may have during the year, in the financial year or a review period from your perspective, there may be multiple changes. So how do you incorporate those changes in the broader guideline? Or not necessarily RBI, even Environment Ministry for that matter. How do you feed that back into your framework?
So we have a market research team which regularly monitors each sector. They conduct sectoral reviews. They update the complete banking within. So this is an internal team which conducts internal webinars along with the regulatory changes, the proposed changes, the potential impacts, and accordingly the exposures are just to the particular sector.
Okay, thank you.
They also have subscriptions to these various news and rating like CRISIL, Bloomberg. We see the sectoral reports, specific industry reports.
Right. Okay.
Varun, please go on.
Sir, this E&S committee team of your bank, does they carry out any stakeholder engagement prior to the approval of the loan?
Definitely no. As you can understand, the stakeholder engagement is part of the particular project developer's job. Yes, we speak to the credit team while appraising the project, speaks to some of their suppliers, some of the customers that they have claimed as part of their how they are earning their particular revenue. So the particular team discusses with suppliers, customers, some sample customers. We try to understand the any ESG controversies depending on the media reviews. So we conduct specific media reviews. We have subscriptions to CRISIL, Bloomberg Terminal, etc. Along with the websites review, the general news reviews. So that way we try to understand if there are any protests from the workers or any particular site had any social unrest because of any specific impacts, etc. So there is no direct stakeholder engagement as such, but this is an indirect process.
Okay, sir. Sir, one thing more, during the execution of the project, when the loan has been granted, in case of any infrastructure project, if any social issues pops up, like relating to the labor or land acquisition, then what is the way forward in that case of bank?
So large infrastructure projects typically have milestone-based. It's like similar milestone-based disbursals. So once they have, first we check whether they have all the clearances. For large projects, they also have DPRs, EI reports. Those checklists are seen. There is a lender's engineer sometimes on the site on behalf of a consortium of lenders. And in such cases where there is unfortunate incident, we hold back the further disbursements till the situation is amicably resolved. And in any way, the banks, whatever money is used, the various guarantees, including the security amounts that they have kept, the land, the machinery that they have procured, is all in the name of the banks as a guarantee. So this is how they reduce their losses. In case the project is not developing at all, they will either request the relocation of the particular plant, like in some cases, including one of the large plants we knew from Tata Group had to be relocated. So these are very few incidences, 1 out of 1,000 possibly, but the banks have their own methods of recovering money anyway.
Sir, one thing more, sir. Just in case while granting the loan, there may be a scenario that a project is viable, financially viable, but it may have any ESG impact during the tenure. So is there any changes in the loan rates as there can be an impact on environment? Parallelly in a scenario when there is no such impact on financial viability of the project, like a hydroelectric project.
So in absence of the other clearances, like even social license to operate, let us say, this is still considered a risk in case there are a lot of protests. Like we saw recently, we know that there is a refinery project proposed in Konkan. So the international investors that will come in will make sure that all such protests are definitely stopped before they want to invest into such projects. And exclusion list, as you say, the including gambling, tobacco, alcohol, these are very profitable industries. However, we have decided we don't want to get into that area. This is our risk management approach. These are not a good long-term bets, so we are definitely not funding those projects.
Okay, sir.
So based on each specific project, so I have myself spent significant time in consulting earlier, so I know about different sectors. The team members that I have were part of the EI consulting team, so they have also seen a lot of sectors. So depending on particular name of industry or the sector, we know what are the different challenges. We have access to some of the earlier reports as well that the company would have given. So we customize the questions that we want to ask. And in the final section, corrective action plans, depending on what are the important challenges that could be a risk in future. For that, there is a corrective action plan agreed, and there is a monitoring of it with a definite timeline. So before the next loan renewal in next year, the company has to abide by all of these requirements that they have agreed, because these are part of the sanction letters. So including the renewable energy projects, as we were saying, the India government does not mandate them any environmental or social impact studies. However, international investors definitely want to understand, because even in case of large solar farms, etc., we know that there can be some environmental or social issues which can impact the project in future. So some aspects are also covered, even if the project is considered green. So one interesting development, this is one gift city in Gujarat. The regulator there has already mandated 5% of the incremental loans compared to previous year's loan book and new loan book. The 5% of that new money has to go towards this sustainable finance. So in absence of the government of India's official what is green, which is called taxonomy, they have given these 10 sectors, and banks have also freedom to define their own sectors which will be considered either green or socially good, and we have to have 5% exposure to the sectors. RBI's last year paper also mentioned climate risk and sustainable finance. So they may not start with 5% because many banks still do not categorize what is green, social. So there will be some transition period, but definitely it may be 1%, 2% of the incremental loan book may be mandated in next few years by RBI as well to all the banks. So that time tagging these projects by studying the BRSR or any other sustainability disclosures that you are making will be definitely helpful. So we'll briefly cover the climate risk for lending. You are all aware about the proposed European Union CBAM or carbon border adjustment mechanism, similar to any typical carbon credit. The polluting industries which are not covered under the carbon mechanisms of particular countries will be made to pay a differential of carbon tax in Europe and in whichever country they are operating. So this will essentially make their industry competitive. Those who want to have some emission reduction measures, technology interventions to reduce their own carbon tax. Otherwise, they will not be competitive compared to, let us say, imports from China, India, or any other developing countries, which may not have a carbon price. So this is one of the papers which says that in the Indian steel may be taxed around 246 pounds per metric ton, euro per metric ton, so which will increase the cost of our steel by 32%. So definitely the industry has woken up and making efforts to get them recognize our national carbon market. And as a bank, we are concerned that whether the exports in view of such taxes in future, including Europe or any other countries any other sectors, including automobiles, aluminum, etc., maybe how they may be impacted. So this is considered as a transition risk of a climate change. So as Pratiksha was mentioning about the taxes, what will be the nature of taxes? This is one report from the European Central Bank. They are they have taken different scenarios: orderly transition, disorderly transition. So these are like if all the countries agree to a uniform change, if all countries do not agree to a uniform change, and the carbon prices of up to $600 or more than that are possible by 2050. That is what the ECB is saying that banks should consider. This is for the European banks, of course, but this gives an idea that where the banks are going, that all the carbon prices will be possibly taken as a negative cash flow in analysis of profitabilities of the companies.
Can you once again explain, please, this orderly, disorderly, and household work?
So orderly transition is where all countries agree to Paris climate change or Glasgow Accord, and everybody moves in a definite path. Disorderly transition is where there is a political differentiation as it is now, and in future some countries may have tax, some other countries may not have tax, and as we go towards 2050, as the impacts of physical climate risk like extreme weather conditions, sea level rise, etc., come into play, everybody will suddenly wake up and make these changes. So that is called disorderly transition. So these are the scenarios of NGFS. The central banks, including RBI, has signed the Network for Greening of Financial Systems, NGFS scenarios. If you search, you will get the reports of detailed models.
What does hot house world mean? The third one?
Hot house world is nobody has agreed on any transition. So the last bullet point, if you see, nobody has agreed on the transition, and we definitely are going towards 3 degrees centigrade by 2080. So there is no global principle on the climate negotiations which is agreed, and every country moves at its own fashion, and which will definitely impact the climate. So this is the worst case scenario.
But this is not a scenario because EU has already started putting forth the
This
climate.
is for the global. This is for the global impact. Only EU doing it is not going to help, because energy consumption drivers are developing countries, China, India. These are the growing countries. The population is where the next future expansion of population is going to happen. So the energy demand will drive.
Understand? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is a summary of the physical and transition risk. Importantly, what we have to understand here is the actual physical impacts like temperature change, change in rain patterns, sea level rise, droughts. These are physical changes. The transition risks are from the policy changes, the European Carbon Border Adjustment Act, the national carbon markets in India that is proposed, the changes in policy. Some time ago, the transportation ministry was saying we'll ban diesel cars by 2025 or 30. In that case, what will happen to the automobile industry as well as the dependent value chain of auto ancillaries? We have a huge value chain which employs lakhs of people in those sectors as well. So the banks are monitoring these changes as well, how the policy is impacting the particular sectors. And accordingly, we try to take appropriate risk mitigation measures. That is why RBI, so before going to RBI, this is in public domain, the CDP India's 2022, possibly the annual India report, has mapped how particular sector is saying which types of risks will impact them. The intensity of red is higher impact. So as you can see, the energy intensive sectors like electrical utilities, cement, chemicals, they marked many risks under the physical and transition as where it will impact them. Some of the other sectors, including oil and gas, steel, also surprisingly, the hospitality sector says that the acute physical risk will impact because tourism is dependent on the sea level, coast, many properties which are possibly vulnerable to the risks of climate change in future. So the banks are monitoring these sectors. In some cases, they are taking what is the appropriate exposure to this sector. So there is a limits monitoring committee within the portfolio risk review, which monitors exposure to these particular sectors. So let us say, so there is no credit concentration risk. I should not be exposed to the carbon intensive sectors like thermal, power, steel, oil and gas beyond a value where I cannot recover my money possibly. So that is why RBI came up with this is the top one is transition and physical risk, how climate risk is seen, and the typical 4 risks that are seen in the banking sector: credit risk, market risk, liquidity, and operational. The interrelations between these are given here. So all the climate risks are going to impact the banking risks in some or other way. So this is what RBI's climate risk discussion paper proposed. First, the overview of climate-related risk. Regulated entities, including banks, insurance, and other agencies which are regulated by RBI, are called REs, regulated entities. So this is for the all financial sector companies which are regulated by the RBI. So they want the banks to have a broad guidance, which is appropriate governance mechanism. As I was mentioning about, we have this portfolio review committee, risk committee, then it goes up to the bank's board, investment committee, etc. So there should be an appropriate body which will oversee the climate risk as well. Then strategy to address the climate change risk. One of the measures, as I was explaining, in absence of specific models or the emissions, even the emissions of all the industries are not in public domain yet. So they want to have strategy towards addressing the climate change risk. So currently some banks are considering, should I limit exposure to some of the carbon intensive sectors as a proxy towards the actual climate risk models. Then in Europe, etc., they are also using these scenario analysis models, the NGFS scenarios that we just saw in the previous slide. So many scenarios are available in public domain. These are called IEA, IPCC, and the NGFS scenarios. The banks, some service providers are coming forward to help banks with these scenario analysis as well, which requires, of course, the data of particular your exposure to particular sectors, particular geographies, the sea level rise, the drought projections in those areas in for next 15 to 20 years of your loan tenures. So these things are being studied or kept recommended by the RBI that it should be seen from that point of view as well. Disclosure. So the RBI has recommended go for TCFD kind of disclosure for all the banks. Since this is not mandatory yet, but at RBL we have supported TCFD last year and are looking to see how we can start disclosing on our climate risk in next couple of years that the TCFD allows after this supporting. Capacity building is happening in within the teams by taking various courses online as well as through the IBA. Just last week, I attended one session from IFC and IIBA, specific towards the Indian banking. There is an agency which conducts various courses. So along with IFC, they also started one climate risk course. I'm not sure if it is open to non-banks. I'll possibly find out and share that. But it's in public domain. IIBF and IFC launched this program. And they also mentioned reduce your or have some voluntary initiatives like reduce carbon footprint of your operations or do a risk assessment of your data centers so that in view of physical climate risk events like cyclones, floods in a specific cities, your operations should not be hampered. So some of the good practices recommended by RBI says that start monitoring your carbon intensive sectors, possibly have a measure, a loan exposure or revenue of that particular industry per ton of your CO2 emissions, particular industry that they're doing. How are they progressing? Is it going up or down in next 2-3 years? So that is going to be monitored, and possibly it will also impact your loan interest rates in future possibly. So they also said collateral positioned in high-risk flood-prone areas. So this is already followed in some of the European banks. So whichever particular properties that you want to give as the collateral for the loans, the 100% of that value will not be considered, because in view of sea level rise or flooding in that particular area in future, the future value of that asset may come down. So they will consider 70%, 60% of that value, asset value today. They also said that monitor the exposure to the particular industries which are dependent on sea level, coastal areas, as well as dependent on the melting of Himalayan glaciers, because in future one of the impacts of physical climate change will be possibly the glaciers will melt faster, and the perennial rivers that are available now may not be available in future. So this is a brief of what RBI has recommended. So generally talking about the what are the future risks that are coming. We have covered most of those, but I particularly like this summary of the plan A, which is available in this particular slide I'll share with you. So the race to net zero, in view of the carbon border adjustment tax from the European Union and many other such policies proposed, many companies will try to identify which companies or which suppliers are having supplies which will possibly reduce my carbon border adjustment tax related outgo. So those companies with better carbon footprint will possibly see a premium to their prices. Decarbonization, similar again, many banks will be finding clients which are having good decarbonization strategies, trying to fund those. It will be either exposure in terms of energy efficiency for certain period, then renewable energy, and future technologies like green hydrogen and batteries, etc., electric vehicles. Sustainable regenerative supply chain, Anirban covered it, so I'll not go into that. The E&S risk framework that we were already doing, possibly the new SEBI's guidelines will help Indian ESG regulatory agents, the Indian ESG rating agencies, ERPs, to customize these ESG risks in view of such changes and reduce our workload that I need not study each and every company. Currently, the rating agencies, as you know, cover only the top 100, or CRISIL went up to 600, 650, I think. So going further, most of the companies which will publish BRSR possibly will be covered by these rating agencies. And depending on internal capacity, some of these works may be outsourced by the banks to the rating providers. That please look into this particular borrower, which is not listed company or is beyond 1,000, and still I want to review it from the ESG risk. So data and technology, possibly you have been discussing for quite long now. Earlier morning session also we discussed. In view of the SEBI's requirement that top 150 companies for this year, and after 3-4 years, all the top 1,000 companies will have to get the sustainability data assured for the core indicators of BRSR, which is comprehensive assessment. Hence, post companies may possibly go for the software. The next session planned is on one such software. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pravin, sir.
Yeah.
We are lacking on time. But yeah, do
Sure,
you
sure.
want to continue with more slides?
No, that was the last slide.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any question, just put it on the Excel sheet which I have shared with you. Otherwise, you can ask 2-3 questions to Pravin, sir. Right now, we have Abhirup here with us. So yeah, go ahead. Just quickly.
Sure.
Pravin, sir, this batch of ours is very, very new to BRSR and ESG, first of all. And people from Wipro and a lot of like amazing companies, they are being part of us, and we have taught them everything regarding BRSR, but regarding the BFSI and this section is very new to them. So there must be, quite a lot of lack of understanding, or the terms were not clear to them.
Yeah, there were a lot of discussions during the session also. So I understand. Even later, if you have any questions similar to what Anirban said, you can either share through Pratiksha or connect with me on LinkedIn.
So the carbon tax that you talked of, was that $240 or euros per ton, or was it per?
This is the estimation. This is the estimation of 2030 by McKinsey.
Okay.
I had given reference to that particular slide. Currently, the EU ETS tax for the regulated entities already reached at 100 for the European developed credits. So possibly it will definitely go to 300 by 2030 and 600 by 2050 as they have projected. This is a projection, of course, but these are some
Understand. Fine.
just to see the impacts.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, Joseph sir, please.
Yeah, the session was really helpful. Just quick question. BlackRock has come up with an ESG index, and I know that there is some guidance in our BRSR framework saying that it's going to be the future for BSE. Is there any of the BFI product guys on their mutual fund or carbon bond that they are actually envisaging? Do you see a trend of they putting an index on ESG along with their product? Do you know any point of view? Do you have a point of view on it?
SEBI is going to affiliate the ESG rating providers. So banks may not have their own ESG rating provider. We have internal rating teams which will try to integrate these ESG ratings provided by external agencies. We subscribe to CRISIL, Equity, and some of the international agencies like S&P, Sustainalytics, etc. We use the rating to find out, but we still do the transaction level assessment within the bank. So the SEBI is going to list different the ESG rating products. They will have their own guidelines. So far, the banks have not announced any plan, but it will be part of our internal reports. So our reports will not be made public possibly. Part of our requirement are under the RBI that we cannot disclose client information or what went into that particular assessment, etc.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that from a BFSI standpoint, like the Morningstar, or there will be some guys who will be popping up an available data for the wider public, because ultimately the public need to buy the product, isn't it? And there has to be.
S&P and Sustainalytics ratings you can definitely find it public. The summaries are available, but because they is also spent towards these assessments, so the full reports are available only to subscribers or available to purchase. The summary of those reports for the top listed companies is made public. So definitely for the top 200, 300 companies, you can go to the S&P and Sustainalytics ESG rating and see the summary of the rating that is given on ESG. CRISIL publishes their
That's available.
CRISIL publishes CRISIL publishes their annual ESG ratings in public for the 650 companies. So some of those are also available. Yeah.
I'll share, Pravin sir. They are very new to this. I know this, so I'll share with them. And if you have any things which can be helpful to understand whatever you have taught just now, so it would be great. And thank you for the PPT, and thank you for the broad understanding of whatever you whatever you told us. It's really new to us, each of us. So yeah, thank you so much. And if you want to stick around, you can. We have a abhirup from Oren. So we'll start with abhirup's session now. Thank you, abhirup, and thank you, Pravin sir, for joining us on Sunday afternoon.
Thank you all.
Yeah. So hi abhirup, how are you?
Hey Pratiksha, I'm good. Hello team.
We had 2 sessions earlier, so some of them are tired and some of them are really excited to know more about what you do and what Oren has to offer. So yeah, we can bring a light on you, and you can start.
So first of all, very good afternoon to everyone, and I'm sure like it will be very tiring to understand all of these terminologies and that on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm like in between your lunch and this session. So I would not make it so much elaborative and again, not full of jargons. But what I'll try to do is like kind of give you an overall picture. And again, like I'll not take more than 10 to 15 minutes to explain that. Then it can be just an open questionnaire that we can have so that all the doubts, anything that you might have, I can clarify those things. Is that good enough, Pratiksha? Anyone else have any suggestions? To feel free to even interrupt me in between. That's fine.
No problem. You want to share your screen?
Yes, I
have
do.
access. Yeah.
Yes, I can share it. So yeah, hello everyone. Good afternoon. So as we have already, like I was listening to Pravin sir's session also, and he explained the entire spectrum of how RBI and even like the banks are looking into ESG factors while taking their investment decision. So that's why like I would not like to touch upon these things, but this is more of like how ESG is becoming more and more important or a boardroom agenda today for all the companies out there. So our primarily work involves into working with these top 1,000 listed companies or even like companies which are private today, but they do want to look into the ESG inclusion in their strategy, kind of create a report to show what are the things that they are doing and all. So this is kind of like a typical case for an company, for a company or an organization to see that today customers are looking into it. So when I tell about customers, all the companies who are based out of India and they have an export footprint. It can be pharma, it can be auto, it can be apparel, fashion, anything. Wherever they are supplying to any European company, countries or North American countries. So their customers over there, they're asking about this ESG disclosures from them. Investors, again, like they are the major push for ESG incorporation in the company. Employees, not that much in India, but again, like globally, you can see the diversity inclusion being one of the primary topic. Then kind of like freedom to work and all of these things are a few things that are being looked upon. Regulators like SEBI, all the other regulators are also now looking into it. So more or less, it is becoming more compliance requirement for all the countries out there. And then finally, the banks. So they play an important role in terms of dispersing the capital needed for any company's growth. So that's where banks are also incorporating these risks and asking about the ESG disclosures today. Right. So now what I wanted to project or show you that when any company gets started with their ESG journey, it's not something that they can do overnight. Like it will not happen in a year's time to get everything done. Like Pravin said, told about the ESG risk or climate risk assessment. So to get to that level of, let's say, getting to a TCFD reporting or a climate risk assessment, first of all, you need a plethora of data which you can utilize to find out that what is my risks from a climate risk, physical and transition risk, and then kind of the mitigation methodology that you bring in, right? So this is kind of like a typical chart of any company. And again, like I'm not saying that this is the only way any company can do it. They can obviously hack it out to get this thing done in an earlier time frame. But when any company does get into an ESG journey, first year would be somewhere around just figuring out what are the material topics which are important for them and kind of creating a baseline report out of it, which is just for their internal understanding or even like communication to the outer public, saying that this is what is our environmental or social footprint or impact that we are creating because of our business. Second year is when, like again, first year companies would be setting up their internal targets, but then second year is when they will be able to much more confident to kind of like communicate it out in the public, saying that these are our sustainable development goals or whatever the KPIs and targets that we are setting. And again, like creating a report, which is going to be like an annual communication to their investors and all the other stakeholders. Year three is when they can start utilizing this data. So when we talk about ESG from a risk management point of view, once we have, let's say, like 2 years of data, historical data, or like we are running in a third year, that is when this data actually becomes important, where you can derive something out of it, like how things are changing, what are the trends that we are seeing, what are the impact that we are seeing because of the business. Like example being in the supply chain that we discussed earlier. On the supply chain front, because of flooding or any other climate related risks, what has been the impact on the business for the last 2 years, 3 years. That will give you kind of better understanding and better quantification of risk to the dollar value or revenue that can get impacted out of it, right? And this is when get started with their tracking of goals and targets, how they are and all. The fourth year, when they are mature enough to kind of see the entire modeling thing working for their business benefit, that is when they kind of utilize this data. And even though we have seen companies getting into the sustainable supply chain piece where they're getting data from their supply chain vendors to also account into this, but again, like it also takes that much time to first of all warm up all the supply chain vendors understanding this problem and why they are doing it. Then by after like getting them onboarded, it will be more of training and awareness creation with them. Once the capacity is built, that is when the sustainable value chains can be like really utilized, where all your vendor partners are also aligned to these methodology of being sustainable company. They also incorporate all of these policies and the kind of risk assessment that you are doing to again like improve their business practices as well. And then kind of like data utilization in terms of making those models much more robust. And then by fifth year, when you have, let's say, like 4-year data already in your like any Excel sheet or anything, any modeling software that you have, that is when you can actually utilize this from a risk management or risk mitigation methodology. So this is when the actual data comes into picture. You will be able to utilize that data, kind of take inputs from it, again, like plan the initiatives for the entire year, that how we want to have a cost saving because of this, how we can mitigate any risks in the supply chain disruption because of any climate related disruptions and all. So this will be much more accurate, and this is where you will see the actual potential and the value of the data or the exercise that you have done for the last 4 years. So this is what we have seen in the typical journey of a company, and where the data that is reliable enough and give them more and more insights on the business front. So now, as I mentioned, like these are the 5-year plan, or let's say like you can say that a transitional journey for any company. How does it look like for any company who is getting started, or like kind of even companies who have started earlier? Few of them might be having a similar challenge today. So this is what is the major challenge that we have seen in the industry. And again, like globally also it is there, but today specific to India, there are lack of subject matter experts within the organization. So today what we have seen, people working in the employee health and safety function, or let's say like who are into the finance function or risk function, or maybe who are into the compliance function, they have been promoted and given additional charge in terms of looking into ESG. Whereas ESG is nothing but like, it is not a PR activity, or it is not just a compliance activity. It is more of a holistic and a comprehensive approach that you have to take, where each and every department has to be responsible, and there needs like they need to be involved into each and every process. So that's why we see this is one of the biggest challenge in companies to incorporate ESG and integrate that into the business fabric. Second thing, data. Again, like when you talk about ESG and again BRSR, just by going through the report framework, it covers around 112 questions, right? For those 112 questions, again, like multiple data points are derived data points. It is not directly accounting to the question that is being asked in BRSR. So when you account for questionnaire, it will be somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 data points, which needs to be collected by a company to be disclosed in a BRSR report alone. Now, I'm not even talking about TCFD and GRI report, which is much more advanced than a BRSR one, right? So that's why data collection from multiple location, department, stakeholder, because of internal hurdles in terms of communications, coordinations, and again, like data standardization, because maybe like one plant is maintaining a data in some format and the second plant is maintaining in a separate format, then the office locations might not be maintaining that data in any other format. Then there is like, if they are not putting in that data in their ERP systems right now. So there are much more ambiguity and lack of standardization in terms of the data collection and monitoring process today. Third thing is that when we talk about your ESG data, it is not only limited to your internal organization, it is also going beyond that to your supply chain and the vendor ecosystem, right? So as we are now scratching the surface in terms of just getting and collecting our data, when we move ahead and want to incorporate our vendors as well into this data game, that is where the lack of transparency, visibility on the supply data is also there because of multiple reasons. Like today, let's say we are talking about human rights and we want to ensure that all the human rights policies are being implemented in our vendors' premises. So the only way to ascertain is that is either do a due diligence or an audit in their premise to get that thing validated. There is no other supporting documentation that you can use or kind of any other alternate data that can be used to verify that, right? Similarly, like all of these things are something that you have to take the word of the vendor or something that is like based on audit by a third party or a verification by a third party that you can get the vendor data assisted. Apart from this, separate reporting for customers, regulators, and investors. As I mentioned, like today, maybe banks might be asking these data points in a separate format, right? Your suppliers, let's say you are an auto manufacturing company. So today, all the big players like Maruti, Honda, all of these companies, they might be asking their own disclosure mechanism. All the international companies will be asking you in a separate format. Banks will be asking you in a separate format. Regulatory authority like SEBI will be asking you in a BRSR. And then kind of investors, if let's say there's BlackRock or any other investor, institutional investor, they must be asking you in a TCFD or a GRI report. So when you collate all of these things together, it is not a single data or a single report that you have to churn out. It is a multiple assessments, multiple kind of reports, multiple kind of data requirements has to be fulfilled every year or maybe quarterly to meet all of these ESG requirements, right? And then the fifth thing must be like the accuracy and the consistency of the ESG data. So today, when we talk about accuracy of the data, as I mentioned that all of the data points that we include in our ESG report. So let's take an example of water consumption today. Let's take that example. So in that scenario, today, if you are measuring all of your inlets and outlets points in terms of offices and again, like factory plants in a manufacturing facility, then you can say that it is a much more accurate data. And where if it is deployed through an IoT-based sensor, which gives you a real-time data feedback onto that, then again, like it is something that we can say that the most accurate data that you are collecting. But in lack of any IoT-based or sensor-based system, where it is a manual feeding by any person who is responsible to do that, then again, like there is a degree of error that you have to account for that. Second thing, if you don't even have a measuring equipment or like a meter there, then how are you going to measure it? That becomes a question. So I take an example of water. Same thing goes for emissions. So like again, for solid fuels, this becomes a very much challenging job for companies. For liquid fuels, again, like there are meters and there are more and more mechanisms that can be employed. Same thing goes for waste. Today, waste for scrap metals or anything which has a monetary value in the secondary market that are being measured by the companies. But let's say like your food waste or any organic waste or any like biomedical waste, which is very much traces for the companies and they're not toxic enough. So for that matter, companies don't track those data points today, right? So this needs an overhaul in terms of the thinking mindset. And then again, like it will incur definitely some cost to create that measuring mechanism for you first to that level that at least you get a complete overview of what is your environmental and environmental footprint at least today based on your operations, so that then you can plan all of your decarbonization or anything. Like a climate risk will come later in the point. Until unless you measure all of this data, then definitely that is of no use, because if your data is not right, you can't do anything over there. So this is a typical spectrum, or let's say like a gamut of all the problems that we have seen in companies today when they want to incorporate ESG and they just get started with their ESG programs internally. Now, if I have to show you, like this is a typical cross-functioning chart of how a data flows from different locations or different assets of a company to kind of meet a requirement of it. I'm just taking one example of a regulatory compliance. So when we talk about this regulatory compliance requirement of BRSR, because we're talking about BRSR right now. So let's say company secretary is responsible for meeting this requirement of furnishing the sustainability report or a BRSR report to MCA portal, right? So then it becomes his requirement to get this fulfilled. And that's where if the company secretary or the secretarial department is the process owner for this, they will reach out to this multiple departments, which will be HR, operations, admin, legal, and all of these departments, saying that these are the questionnaires that we need answer from you. You gave us this data so that we can put this together and create our BRSR report out of it, right? So then again, like HR manager will have to collect the data from all the locations, HO, all the fleets that they have, even like supplier data that needs to be collected because of the policy that goes to them. Utility providers, they will give them like all the meter readings on electricity, fuel, and all of this consumption. The same thing, like this becomes multi coordination angle for them, because every department will have some or the other cross linkages with each another asset or any other party altogether. And once, let's say, those data points are being maintained or collated through multiple sources, like it can be an Excel sheet or through an email transfer or through an ERP system, or again, like if it is advanced, there are IoT devices there. So all of these collated together, then being sent to, again, like the secretarial legal team who are actually collating this. I am again talking this in terms, if there is an absence of someone who is looking after sustainability. So if in an absence of a sustainability team, this is what will be a typical journey. And then once the data has been collated and created a BRSR report, that will again flow back to investors, regulators, customers, consumers, and bankers, because this again becomes a single document which is being used by the company secretaries and the legal team because of their particular knowledge that we want to fulfill our compliance requirement, we'll do this. Now, to improve that ESG reporting and disclosure aspect, they do need some kind of help in terms of either having an in-house team to actually perform all of these activities. That what are the risks that you are finding out, or risk management committee, they can help them with that, or a ESG committee who can look after all of these entire thing on a listed company or a non-listed company as well. So when we talk about this again becomes very much haphazard first. Second thing, we don't have a track of the data which is being updated. So let's say like I have taken one update of all the data in the month of April. Now again, like shall I do it in the next month itself? Shall I wait for a quarter to go? When should I update it? Again, like everything will have a different update date. So like your HRMS system will be updating every day. Like it is a real-time system. If a person leaves today, it will automatically be updated on your HRMS system that today my role count is this much. And out of that, these are male and this many number of males and these many number of females. So it is updated on a real-time basis. Whereas when you talk about your emission calculations, which takes account of your electricity bill, right? So electricity bill might, because of my operations in multiple locations, in some place the electricity bill might be coming on 15th of the next month, or it can be a bi-monthly bill, which will come next to next month for this month, right? So that's why there are multiple challenges that we account in terms of what will be a cutoff date and what are the mechanism of data that we need to take. So those standardization again becomes a challenge for them. So I talked about like frequency of data, accuracy of the data, and the third thing would be again like the challenge of how to maintain those data points into a single place so that I know all the data points I have collected till now is being validated when there is a manual override or some manual inputs into this. And the fourth thing would be that how I can collate that data into a report format so that it is easy for me to like meet all my requirements of investors, regulators, and customers, maybe, or even like consumers who are asking about different such disclosures, right? So that's where again, like today I'm just talking about Oren, what we do, but again, this is something that will be a technology play into the ESG spectrum. That if a platform, just assume that there is a platform, a software platform, which gives you a capability of inputting the data in three formats. Either it can be a manual input where you don't have any kind of automation built in if you don't have any IoT based sensors, right? So then you definitely need a manual input. But let's say this is one input mechanism. Second input can be an API integration where if you have an ERP system and an HRMS system, which at least collect, let's say 20-30% of the data. So even that data can be directly fetched in so that I can eliminate that manual intervention over there. And the third one would be, again, like more on the advanced front, which takes inputs from external sources. So today, when we talk about external sources, it can be a temperature or a climate data, or it can be a very specific location-based data, or it can be the data that is available on the social media. So any news articles, anything that comes on, like is it a positive or a negative news about the company, that gets accounted into your climate risk, or let's say a social risk, or kind of like a reputational risk. So all of these external data points also come together, right? So when we talk about this, so these are the three, let's say, input mechanisms where one data points comes from external sources, one data points which can be an automation from you, and third one can be just a manual overview. Now the system, based on all the data inputs, can segregate that data into multiple formats first. So because the immediate requirement that you might be having is to disclose these things, right? So this regulatory requirement of BRSR report gets completed. You can also do a TCF reporting, or you can create a format which is as applicable to your n number of clients. I create a client specific requirement format which can be generated as and when required on a real-time basis, right? So that your first requirement of disclosure is being taken care of. Now, once that is done, second thing that you would be like to looking at is how is it going to be a risk for me today? So from a risk angle, all these external data points and like overlaying that with your internal data, which is a real-time data, that is when the system can give you a viewpoint that from a climate risk, if it's a transition or a physical risk that you are accounting for, this is what is the risk profile that looks like. And you have, let's say, an X amount or a X dollar of revenue at risk in the next 10 years because of your exposure into these areas. So this is how it can give you an input on risk profiling on multiple fronts. And the third aspect would be once the risk has been identified, again, like intelligence should be giving the mitigation methodologies as well. So like we talk about decarbonization and let's say the cross-border carbon taxation. So because of cross-border carbon taxation, you might have a revenue risk of, let's say, 20% because of your export in European countries, which accounts for 20% of your revenue, right? So to mitigate that risk, you should be taking care of your decarbonization journey. So on the decarbonization front, let's say your scope 1, scope 2 emissions and scope 3 emissions combined together is this much. The system can automatically tell you that based on these inputs and as per the SBTi guidelines, this is what can be a typical decarbonization journey map for you, where by 2050 or 2060, you can set your targets to get to a net zero, which will need some kind of reduction initiatives which are planned in these formats. And again, like this can be an offset mechanism right now that you can employ. So multiple ways that can be generated to mitigate a risk. And then again, like the next level of integration or next level of intelligence that can be built in the system would be the scenario planning. So let's say if I want to plan that today, if I invest into some or the other carbon offsetting mechanism, let's say like afforestation project that I want to invest into today versus 5 years down the line. And second thing would be like my energy reduction through any intervention into the IoT-based, sensor-based smart building that I want to go for, or a green building certification that I want to go for my corporate offices. So what will be a typical spectrum of my decarbonization that I can achieve by these initiatives? And at the same time, what will be a relative cost for it, right? So these are the things that can be driven or that can be given out of from any ESG data management system, because when you talk about all of these things being done together, today it is more of like a manual task, and it is more of like a, I would say, services-based involvement where a person needs to be putting their time to get all of these things done. Again, like I'm very much sure that this can be done through the platform or a software system or an AI-based system, given that all the data points are being tagged and being accurately available today. So that becomes a challenge. And again, going forward, all of these things will be taken care of because government agencies and again, like all the organizations are putting their efforts in terms of making data much and much standardized and regulated, much more accurate. So that's where this challenge will definitely go away. But this is where the capability of any system or a data-driven decision making can go when we account for this much data that we're talking about on the ESG front. So yeah, this is more or less how a solutioning can look like. Again, like I don't want to talk about ES like be Oren and all, but this is what a data management system should look like, which can be again augmented by a services or kind of like any advisory. Because today we do understand that this space is growing and this entire industry is also evolving. So every day there will be some or other new challenges which we have not accounted for. And again, like the systems are not that well built today to account for each and every small and granularity. That's why there will be an involvement of advisory, which where we need human intelligence, but at the same time, most of the redundant work or the manual work can be outsourced to a system which can take care of these data churning and data modeling exercise. So yeah, with that, I would like to pause and again, like take up any questions, anything that you might have, because like more or less, this is what I wanted to brief about why data is important and how data can be an important factor that helps us to get into this transition journey into ESG, climate change, anything that we want to call it. Anyone, any questions?
Hello, and everyone. Joseph, sir, you have any question?
So, Abhirup, I have a question. So, a lot of maturity has to yet evolve into various data points which are reported on a lot of assumptions today, and maybe some of those, especially scope 3 related things, which are not very concrete to define as of today with the boundaries, etc. So, how's your company or various other any standards coming around that, or this sector has to be kind of, there's a lot of standardization required and there's a lot of evolution required in the overall data reporting. So there are a lot of confusions how do companies report, and there would be obviously disparity between the companies. So some light on that, please.
Sure. And it's also they asked a very touching question and a like very important question today. So when we talk about scope 3 again, that becomes like a major point for India as an economy, because we are like, let's say like the back offices of the world, or let's say the services service provider of the world, right? So that's where, because we have a very big exposure in terms of the supply chain, today we have seen a major push in terms of the Indian companies are facing from their global counterparts, asking them about ESG disclosures, and primarily on the scope 3 front, because they also want their vendors to be aligned with their climate mitigation plans or climate journeys. So in terms of the accuracy of the models, or let's say like the kind of maturity that needs to be built in for accounting of these scope 3 emissions, right? So that's where I would say where like we are also working with few of the clients in pharma sector, or let's say like auto sector, where they have been doing this from their end to account their scope 3 emissions. So we have seen few kind of challenges, and again, like I'll bucket it into two major spectrum. First one would be again like very little or no knowledge or awareness around this. This is a typical bucket that we have seen for companies in India. And second one would be, even though they are aware and they do know about ESG, someone might not be serious about doing this. So this is the typical two bucket that I would like to put in. Wherever I have seen there is an intent and they are doing it, they know about ESG and why it is important and all, but there is not, the management is not that much serious about this. That is where even if you deploy the most advanced AI system, you can't get anything out of it. So that is what my thinking is. Until unless you have an intent to do something, you can't deploy a technology which can get the output for you. But for the second bucket, where they don't know exactly what needs to be done and there is an intent to do it, that's where it is I'd say like a year or year and a half long journey, which starts with kind of like a training and capacity building for the vendors, and then kind of creating incentivization programs. So when we talk about incentivization programs, it can be just like merely ESG rating or a ESG kind of like a just putting them into some kind of a competitive thing for your entire supply chain. That also works well, that we have seen instead of a monetary value or monetary incentive. a kind of certification or a kind of like a just recognition to the vendor saying that you have done good in terms of the ESG vendors, ESG parameters. That also works well that we have seen in India today. And now talking about the maturity of the scope 3 emissions. So when we talk about scope 3 emissions, it will be very much difficult to account for all those 15 categories which are being mapped over there, right? So as per the GHG protocol, that is what we have been using, and that is what is a common practice that we have seen across all the companies. So on those 15 categories, what we recommend, and even like on the software platform also, we have that thing enabled. So rather than going like in a single go implementing all of those 15 categories, it is better to first of all churn out that where you have the maximum exposure. So like in your vendor supply chain partners also, there also will be a 80-20 rule. So all the vendors where you have 80% of your exposure in terms of the spending, just account or include those vendors for the first to second year of your exercise, so that you know what is their environmental or ESG footprint, and then account the scope 3 emissions, because as they also have a larger like exposure of their revenues with you, they will be also aligned to kind of incorporate all of the good practices that you are telling them to do, and ESG will be something that they will understand as well. So that is where we would say like recommendation goes from starting with few categories, incorporate that data. Again, like the data automation can be deployed through like a smart sensor-based data real-time collection for your vendors also, that we can implement through our software, or it can be a manual override or a manual feed by their vendors, kind of training, providing a training to the vendors. So we have the platform ready, which can account for training their employees of the vendors, then kind of getting the data, get the data assured for that, kind of like audit that report if the need be for regulatory compliances, and then kind of automate that through a IoT-based intervention as well. So those things are already available today. And again, like from technological advancement point of view, we are still at a very nascent stage in terms of the adoption, not from the invention point of view. So already those things are figured out. Today, we talk about like Web3 or let's say like a blockchain technology, right? So those things are also available, which can make sure that the data accountability also being measured. It's only the problem, I would say, is more about adoption of these technologies, which we are not factoring in today. So as companies in India do feel that the requirement will be much more huge, as they incorporate those things, then it will be much more easier task for all the vendor partners. I hope, sir, this answered your question.
Yeah, it did to a lot of extent. I agree.
Okay.
Adoption as well as imagining some of those use cases which will become important maybe at a later date, and identifying them today to be like materialistic enough to be accounted for are some challenges which we face today in our operational things. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I think Joseph, sir, you have a question, right?
Yeah, quick question. Thanks for the session. Trying to understand, so where does Orange sit in terms of, is it an advisory? Is it a data platform that you guys turn out report? So what's the portfolio? That's one. Second is like, I mean, I saw your chart where other than external data, rest everything is proprietary data to a company, right? So if you're actually going after a large company, a large logo, then they will be, hesitant to put out their proprietary data on a third-party platform. Where if you're a startup, if you're an accredited platform like the DNBs of the world, then that's a different game. Or CRISIL of the world is a different game, right? Because there is much assurance and data protection available. So these two, I'm just curious.
Okay, so let me answer that your first question. Where do Orange stands today? Like, what is the what we are doing, right? So we are a ESG data management and intelligence platform. That is what we call it. Advisory is something that we provide in terms of the, like, either it can be a collaboration or from the in-house team also, which we do provide for any company to get started with this journey. But again, like, our main focus has been on the technology platform, how it can be used to like reduce the friction or adoption time for any company to get into ESG. And when any company is already doing the ESG programs in terms of reporting and everything that they want to do, how it can include more and more viewpoints into this, like the social data which is publicly available, or let's say like the climate related data. All of these data points, either a company has to go and source it individually, buy the data, rather than doing it themselves. We do want to provide that through our platform, right? So that is where we play, that we are a data management and intelligence platform. And today, wherever you face any challenge in terms of adoption, in terms of any hand holding that might be needed, that is where the advisory comes into play. Again, advisory can be in terms of like initial handholding of how the program shall be designed, how a policy needs to be framed, and all of these things, which is again like a more of a one time or a like a very less time intensive job for you. But going forward, what we also want to bring in that like intelligence to kind of creating a decarbonization plan for the company based on the real-time data will also get created by the platform itself. So that is what is the roadmap that we are taking in. And again, like those models needs to be trained with the data. So that's where we are spending our time in terms of creating those models. But yeah, like a long-term viewpoint that I can say is going to be more of a technology play rather than being an advisory play. I hope this answers your first question. Now, coming to the second question, that other than the external data, most of the data are proprietary to internal organization, right? So they might be hesitant in terms of putting that data into any platform. So to that, my answer to you will be, see, today in any organization, there are multiple software that you're using, like your HRMS system, where you are using, you're putting all your employees' data. There, all the metadata are there. What is their age? What is their like who are there in your family members? So all of these are sensitive data, right? If you're putting that sensitive data in your in any organization or any platform, why would you not put this in any other platform which is already there? And when we talk about the like question in anyone's mind, it will be more around data security and data privacy, right? So today, from a data security point of view, we like again the platform is compliant with GDPR requirements. Again, like it is more around all the international data privacy requirements that needs to be done, even ISO 27001, all of these things are being certified on the platform, so that any company where they have apprehension in terms of what will happen to my data, that has been taken care of. So we don't, again, we also tell that the data that you are putting in, it is not our data, like it is your data only. You are the data owner for this. Today, if you want to keep it, only the system is built to like help you as a co-pilot for this. So like Orin platform is more of a ESG co-pilot or an ESG advisor to you, where you put the data and get the output using our models. So we are not going to like have the accountability or ownership of your data anymore. So that is where we have a like a definite line between what we do and what we don't do. So all the models behind it, all the like the GHG calculations, all the kind of data formats in terms of BRS and GR report. So those formats are being prepared and being maintained by us. So we will update it as soon as there is an update in the global frameworks or any data reports. But whatever updates are happening in your internal organization, whatever things that you plan, whatever things you do, that is your ownership. You put that data, how you do want to do it, either manually through an API, through direct integrations and all, that is your ownership. So this is just like a clear foundation in terms of what we own and what customer owns for us.
Do you guys sign an NDA, any kind of NDA with the companies?
Yeah, you do sign an NDA with us saying that this is what will be happening. And again, like from a data privacy today, as whatever we are getting, let's say like if I am integrating my system with your ERP system today, right? So even on that front, the data that we'll be capturing, either it can be a real time, if you allow me to, or it can be a snapshot, which will be like a snapshot being authorized by your IT team that gets fed into a system. So there are multiple layers of like data, I would say blocking or let's segregation that can be done through the platform based on the maturity level or how companies want to use it. So we give that flexibility to anyone.
Thank you.
Abhirup, to understand more, you just said that it can be integrated with the existing ERP system. So that's what I was wondering, because you said your role is the data collection, but the data input remains with the client.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yes.
if I already have HRM system, multiple systems, and then I have one more platform from you to, and enter the data. It's going to be a extra maintenance or extra input from my end. Because
Okay.
if I only have to enter the data. Here, one use case, suppose as a company, I have a choice right now, either I have my own internal environmental team who will be collecting data, because we know that, software can create reports, but the main center point is data for any report. And the biggest challenge is the data collection. So either I have my own team who will be collecting, it's their responsibility how they are collecting the data and creating these reports, or I hire a third-party consulting team who will be responsible to create to collect these data and then create my report. Third option, which you are providing. So why should I go with this software or platform, not with rest of the two options?
So when I talk about this, so let me ask you a counter question on this. When you do your financial accounting, are you relying it with a pen and paper or an Excel sheet today, or are you using any of a FIFO model or any ERP system today?
Right now, it's combinations of, for example, HRM management, but the rest of the data is pure Excel.
On Excel, you are maintaining all your like finances. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you not even using Tally?
Yeah, accounting is using. I'm just
Using,
giving
right?
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like that's what is the thing is. See, data today, even though if it is manually fed, like I'll take an example of environmental data where you're saying that I'm just tracking my electricity consumption. Okay.
Yeah.
Either you can do it with your internal team who are spread across all the locations, and you tell them that by end of the month, you give me that what is the electricity consumption of this plant and this office, which I'll collect and collate into a Excel sheet, right? Now, how are you going to ensure that the data that they have put in is right or not? That becomes a first question. So this is where either on the end of the month or when you are reconciling the data, someone has to cross-check that with the electricity bills there, or it can be by the end of the year when you are actually creating a report out. So there is a manual intervention needed twice. Like once someone is filling in the data, second time will be a validation of the data. Now, in case of any ERP system, obviously that is also going to be a manual feed, either by the user who is actually doing it, or it can be directly taking in fed from the billing agency or any other third-party data providers where you are getting the utility bill directly being tagged in there, right? So that eliminates that manual error point. So when I am integrating into a ERP, today, what we have seen primary challenges are that all the ERP systems or different, let's say like Tally or accounting system that companies do have, they account for only the amount that is being incurred for this activities. Like electricity bill, if there is a data available for electricity bill in the ERP system or accounting system, it will be the amount there, not the quantity, or it can be like a kilowatt hour or kVH. What is the consumption quantity? That is not there, right? So that's where the integration will be not useful if you don't have the quantified data already present in your ERP system or any other like management system that you have, any software systems. So that's where the third kind of solution comes into picture, that rather than doing it like kind of a hybrid where first step will be manual and then kind of integrating into the ERP system, it will be much better for you to kind of put a sensor there, which again, like today's, the cost of sensors are so low that you can directly deploy it there, which can churn the data on a real-time basis, and that gets directly fed into the system. So you eliminate two things. One, requirement of a person who needs to be filling in the data there. Second thing, any validation, who needs to, like, there has to be a validation mechanism within your organization. So both the things gets eliminated by just putting in one sensor and a software like Oren or any other data management software, which takes the feed directly from there.
Okay. So you mean you will be integrating with all the data points? I mean, for example, here you said about the electricity consumption So there you can put the sensor, but
Yeah.
the internal data like HRM. So there you will be integrating your platform with HRM existing
Yeah.
system.
So it can be a combination of integrations. Like with HRMS, if you're maintaining the data in HRMS system, you would not put the data again in my system. So
Yeah.
think of it, Oren, as like a super set of all of these systems
APIs.
where it is either taking inputs through APIs, either manual or can be directly through the sensors. All of these things like working together to create a report data or like an ESG data bank for you.
Okay. And at any point, any department has to enter any data manually on your platform?
Yeah, if you don't have any automation or API linkage, then it can be directly done manually. So
Okay.
let's say I'm taking an example of all the HR data, like all the employees that you have, all the like kind of breakup, all the communications that you do with them in terms of trainings, and also you have a learning management system or an HRMS system, right? So which will give you all the training data and the employee related data already fed in through API. Now for environmental data, electricity is something that you are already taking in ERP. So it will take that data from ERP. But for water, let's say you don't have any data points being measured today, which has to be fed by someone at the plant or an office location. So that can be done through a manual intervention.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Got it. Thanks.
Okay, we can wrap this up. And thank you so much, Abhirup, for patiently answering all the questions. I know it is a software. I have provided the link because you guys are not aware about the SaaS-based product. There are many, but one of the example is Oren from Abhirup. He's a co-founder of Oren, and you can check out his platform. It's available for demo, right? You can provide demo. Yeah.
Yeah. You can just like go onto this link and like request a demo. Someone from my team will definitely reach out to you and take you through that entire process.
Yeah, we have a lot of, head of sustainability department and ESH department, so they can reach out to you if they needed someone for ESG and BRSR. So yeah, thank you so much, all of you. This is the last session and we can wrap this up, and you have to submit case studies to get the certificate. And yeah, 3rd of June, we will be wrapping whole boot camp. So if you need anything from the experts, you can put the question in the Excel. And yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Pratiksha.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye, everyone.